Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Beitzah, pages 12 through 18, Yud Bet through Yud Chet. The Mishnah on page 12, Yud Bet. Beit Shammai Omrim, Ein Motzi'in, Lo et HaKatan, V'lo et HaLulav, V'lo et HaSefer Torah, L'Reshut Rabim. So the school of Shammai says that on Yom Tov one is not allowed to carry in the public domain a baby, or a lulav, or a Torah scroll. However, Beit Hillel Matirin, the school of Hillel allows these things. Why this machloket? What's the nature of the machloket? The Gemara explains that since carrying was permitted on Yom Tov for food-related matters, ochel nefesh, then the malacha was relaxed even more broadly to include non-food scenarios where it's not letzorach ochel nefesh. So this is in fact the halacha that on Yom Tov the laws of carrying are very, very different from the laws that are on Shabbat. That even in the absence of an eruv, even just in an open environment, a person can carry items in the public domain shalol tzorach ochel nefesh that are not related to food. So, for example, a talit, a machzor, a siddur, a sefer Torah, and the like that are needed for Yom Tov worship. Now, Yud Gimel. The Gemara here talks about Maaser Rishon, first tithe, which is given to the Levi, when the grain had yet to be processed, when the wheat was still in the stalks. So Maaser Rishon Shekdima B'Shibolim Patur Malei Truma Gedola, that if Truma Gedola was not taken prior to the giving of Maaser Rishon from this as of yet unprocessed wheat, then there is no longer any obligation to give Truma Gedola. It's exempt. Why? Because the Torah says you shall give from this produce a tenth of a tenth, a tithe of a tithe. So in that scenario where the Levi preempted the Kohen prior to the finishing of the production process of the grain, there is only an obligation of Maaser min HaMaaser, a tenth of a tenth, and no additional obligation of Truma Gedola, which ordinarily is given first. Yud Daled. Mishnah tells us, Beit Shammai Omrim, Ein Meshach Yom Tov El Amanot. On Yom Tov, if you want to send a gift to somebody else, you can only send food that is ready to eat. Okay, on Yom Tov we like to eat food, Simchat Yom Tov, to rejoice in the holiday, and Beit Shammai says it's got to be ready to eat. It cannot require any further preparation. Beit Hillel says no, we're more lenient than that. You're allowed to send meat, whether it's poultry or red meat, and it doesn't matter whether the animal's alive or dead. Certainly if it's dead, if it's already shchuta, that's closer to being ready to be eaten. However, even if it's alive and you have to do shchita now, that's okay because you're allowed to do shchita on Yom Tov. So this gift has usability on Yom Tov. Moreover, you could send wine, or you could send oil, or you could send flour or legumes. But Beit Hillel concedes you cannot send raw grain. Why? Because what are you going to do with it on Yom Tov? If it hasn't already been made into flour, if it's still just raw grain kernels, then there's hardly any use for it. However, Rabbi Shimon says you could even send tevuah, unprocessed grains. Why? Because it's possible to cook them in such a fashion as to make them edible. Tetvav. Here the Mishnah has a new parak, starts a new parak. Oset tavshil me'erav Yom Tov v'samach alav l'Shabbat. You prepare a food item on Friday that is Yom Tov, that on Thursday, which is Erev Yom Tov, or the diaspora on a Wednesday, which is Erev before a 2-day Yom Tov, and you rely upon it for Shabbat. So the scenario is Yom Tov and Shabbat are back-to-back, with Yom Tov being on Friday, and possibly also a Thursday Friday. So you have to prepare a food item prior to Yom Tov and rely upon it to justify cooking on Yom Tov for the sake of Shabbat. This is known as Eruv Tavshilin. The Gemara wants to know, what's the point of Eruv Tavshilin? Why do we have to bother doing this? And they give two theories. One theory is that you should set aside a good portion for Shabbat and a good portion for Yom Tov. The concern was if you didn't set aside this Eruv on Erev Yom Tov, you would eat all the goodies, all the delicacies on Yom Tov, and there'd be hardly anything left for Shabbos. And that's not fair to honor the Sabbath. So therefore, make the Erev Tavshilin beforehand to know that at least you'll have that, and you won't go hungry on Shabbat. Alternatively, The other theory is in order that people should not say, well, the people should say, I'm not allowed to cook on Yom Tov for the sake of the Sabbath unless I took a preparatory measure of the Eruv. All the more so I can't cook from a Yom Tov to a weekday, to a Chol. So it's a safeguard of Yom Tov. Now the first theory is safeguarding Shabbat. The second theory is safeguarding Yom Tov. Ted Zayin, 16. Amru alav Shammai hazaken. They said about Shammai that every day he ate in honor of the Sabbath. How so? Matzah behemana omer zulu Shabbat. If on a Sunday he found a cow that looked impressive and its meat would be a good, tasty a meal for Shabbat, he'd buy it. But on Monday he'd find even better looking animal. And what would he do? He'd buy that for Shabbat. And as for the one he bought on Sunday, he'd eat it on Monday. And every day as the week progressed, he'd find a better and better animal, so that every day he was eating the previous day's selection. So in fact, every day he had a great meal, courtesy of his desire to honor the Sabbath. However, Beit Hillel had a different attitude. All his deeds were for the sake of heaven. So he took a day-by-day approach. He said, you know what? Hashem will help me. At the right time, when I'm ready to buy my food for Shabbat, I will be blessed with divine intervention, and I'll find something good. So he didn't need to bother on Sunday or Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday every day looking for something for Shabbat. Comes along later in the week, maybe even Friday, and he would select what was appropriate for him, and that's how he honored the Shabbat, and expressed his belief in Hashem's help. Yud Zayin. Tanu Rabbanan. We learned in a Braita. Yom Tov shechalut b'Shabbat. What happens if Yom Tov falls on a Shabbat? What happens to the Shmona Esrei? So on a regular Shabbat, there are 7 blessings in the Shmona Esrei. In the Amidah, 3 introductory blessings, the 3 closing blessings, and the 1 middle blessing, which is about the Sabbath day. On Yom Tov, what do? There are 2 different themes that are needed to be included in the middle blessing. So, Beit Shammai says that there should be 8 blessings. You should have 1 for Shabbat and 1 for Yom Tov. So a total of 8 brachot, shmona brachot. However, Beit Hillel says, mitpalel sheva. You only have 7 blessings. How so? Matchil b'shel Shabbat. You begin with a theme of Shabbat in the middle blessing. Mesayem b'shel Shabbat, and you conclude with the theme of the Shabbat. And you say the Yom Tov aspects in the middle of that middle blessing. Rabbi says that the conclusion of the blessing is, as in fact we do it, Mekadesh HaShabbat v'Yisrael v'Hazmanim, that God sanctifies the Sabbath and Israel and the seasons. Yudchet 18. Here the discussion is why we're not allowed to immerse vessels on Yom Tov. So, or for that matter on Shabbat. Rava explained because it looks like you're fixing a vessel, mitaken kli, and you're not supposed to be rectifying things, you're not supposed to be fixing a utensil on a holy day. But if that's true, Adam Nami, then you should not be allowed to immerse as a person. A human being should not be allowed to go to the mikveh on Shabbat or Yom Tov. The Gemara responds, Adam Nira Kamekar. When a person goes to the mikveh, it doesn't necessarily look like they're rectifying their ritual status. It just looks like they're hot and they want to cool off. And they want to make themselves cold. Adam Nira Kamekar. So that's why a person can go to the mikveh on Shabbat and holidays. Everyone have a great week. Gemar Chatima Tova, an upcoming good Yom Tov.